All right. Hello, everybody. Buenas tardes. Ya son las 2 de la tarde, así que vamos a empezar. And I just wanted to start in Spanish because it is Latinx Heritage Month, and I am in Miami, Florida. My name is Caridad Perez or Carrie Perez. I go by both. I identify by both. I am Ecuadorian, but grew up in Atlanta. Now I'm in Miami, so I go back and forth with the Spanglish. But I am so happy today because we are kicking off day 2 of Techqueria's Latinx Heritage Month. And I just want to recap the incredible work that was done yesterday by Francis, Felipe, Sal, Kat, Mary, the entire team at Techqueria. There were 364 one-on-one networking sessions, 912 attendees throughout the event, and over 1,100 registrations on the event platform. And we've reached over 1,700 RSVPs, which is just like truly incredible for the work that Techqueria does to unite the Latinx community all over the United States. And honestly, we are getting people from Latin America as well, maybe some Europe. So I am thrilled to be the moderator for today's keynote speaking engagement and having Max Tuchman, CEO and founder of Caribu, which we're going to dive into what it is in just a little bit. But I want to remind everybody what Techqueria is. So we are the largest nonprofit organization helping Latinx in the United States go through tech, like grow their tech career, get more jobs in tech. And then when you get to those great companies, or you become founders, or you raise some VC or some angel money, that you continue to grow and that you continue to employ more people so that you're able to scale. We have a Slack channel, we have events, San Francisco, New York City, Atlanta, Boston, Austin, a brand new campus in Miami that will hopefully be launching soon, and just over 15 cities in the United States where we gather. We gather monthly and quarterly to talk, to share, to unite forces, because community is so important. And with that, I want to remind you that today's theme for the day is career growth. So yesterday, was breaking into tech. Today was career growth, and tomorrow's community. And to talk about growing your career and how to get that done, who else than Max Tuchman, who, like I mentioned earlier, is the CEO and co-founder of Caribu, an interactive video calling platform that helps grandparents and parents, or really anybody that has kids between the ages of 1 through 7 in their lives, read and draw, and when they're not in the same location. So she likes to say it's when Kindle meets FaceTime. Caribu is one of Time Magazine's top 100 inventions, made Fast Company's list of world-changing ideas. It was named one of the top 10 edtech companies to watch in Forbes, and became one of the most innovative startups in the world by winning the 1776 Global Challenge Cup. And of course, Max, she is the powerhouse that has founded and grew this company. She is the winner or finalist at 30 plus pitch competitions, the first Latina founder to raise $1 million in equity crowdfunding, and was recently named one of Inc. magazine's top 100 female founders for 2019. She's also the daughter of Cuban immigrants, the former executive director for Miami's Teach for America office. She served in Mayor Bloomberg's office, the Gates Foundation. She has an MBA and MPA from the Harvard Business School, and she was selected as a White House Fellow by President Obama. Holy shit, Max. That's like, I'm gonna go ahead and cuss, because I've known you, we're here in Miami, but I was like, how the hell did you get all of this done? So that's my first question, actually, is what was Max like when you were 10 years old?
Oh,
what were you doing?
I was exactly the same. I just don't sleep. So I'm able to accomplish a lot of things and have a lot of jobs in my career because I have more hours in my day.
Did you always want to be an inventor, a creator, or we'll talk about your path through teaching, or did you want to go through the teaching route?
No, I never, I don't think the teaching route was exactly what it was. I've just always wanted to like be my own boss. I'm not just bossy. I am the boss, and I like being the boss, and I like telling people what to do. I feel like that's, very Latina of me, very Cuban of me, to be honest. And I I just felt like I just wanted to always solve problems. Like, I feel like that ever since I was a 10-year-old, right? I would look at problems and I'd be like, I want to solve that, or I want to make this place better, or I want to make this school better, or I want to make my fourth grade classroom better, or I just always have kind of liked problem solving. And I think that's what kind of led me to ending up being a startup founder, is because in each of the roles, and as you were walking through my career, like, I look like I'm running away from the FBI. Like I'm changing states and jobs every like 2 years, but I'm an older millennial. And when I thought about my career, I never wanted to be in one place for 40 years, right? When I was teaching, I knew it was 2 years because I was with Teach for America. When I went to the White House Fellows, I knew it was 1 year. Like, I've very specifically chosen programs where I can come in, I can solve a problem, and then I can move on to another problem to solve.
So I have a question written down here that's, what did you learn from having immigrant parents? Like, maybe is that something that you inherited from being immigrant powered? And I love that phrase, and I love that immigrant powered businesses. So how does being Cuban American fuel everything that you've done so far?
No, 1,000%. So first of all, on the immigrant powered thing, so we're Cubans, we're Jewish Cubans. And on my dad's side, my family actually went through the Holocaust and survived Auschwitz and met in a displaced persons camp, and then fled to Cuba. And on my mom's side, my great-great-grandparents, I think, fled from the Bolshevik Revolution in Ukraine and then came to Cuba. My grandmother was born in Cuba. So like my family's been fleeing, right? That is the story of my family. And it's just been generations of fleeing countries for persecution of whichever kind, right? There's just a ton. And I think that when you grow up, that just ends up becoming that's part of your DNA, because you have generations of family that just had to be relentless and hustle and get creative and learn a new language and make new friends, and build new businesses and make community in places where they didn't necessarily always belong. And I feel like that's like, I guess, kind of how I live my life now, is I'm like I travel I used to travel all the time. But I love being in places where I kind of have to solve things myself, and I have to explore, and I get to learn new things, and I get to put myself in a place where, like my family, right? You kind of have to create something from nothing. I think that's like the most exciting thing you can do in your career, is create something from nothing.
Yeah. And I want to ask you, what neighborhood in Miami did you grow up with? And you went to a low-key university here in Florida. And then you went to an MBA at Harvard. So guide us through 18-year-old Max. So you're graduating here in Miami and you're Cubanita. And then what happens during the next 6 years?
So 18-year-old Max almost dropped out of high school because she was so frustrated with the education system. I was a public school student. I just felt like I wasn't getting a high quality education. I knew I wasn't getting already at 18, like I was like I'm not prepared for college. I'm not prepared for life. Even though I graduated from the same high school that Jeff Bezos did, it's still, we're not challenging students. We're not giving them a strong foundation. We're not providing equitable access for all kids. Spanish is my first language. Like, English is my second language. Like, I don't feel like I don't think I speak either language very well now. I don't know if that's them or me, but I feel like I almost dropped out, and I have to say, my guidance counselor saved my life. I will never forget her, Miss Hanneman, because my mom, pobrecita, like, she doesn't know how to navigate the system, right? She just kind of like relied on me. I think so many of us, like, first generation kids are the people that like our parents rely on to like explain what's happening. And like, when you have an F on your paper, you're like, "Es fantástico." Like that. What do you mean?
F de fantástico.
Yeah. And I remember I brought my mom in to the guidance counselor's office because she's the one that had to sign the paperwork to get me out of school. Like, I was literally dropping out. And Miss Hanneman like realized the power dynamic, and she was like, "Oh, I'm shutting this down." She was like, you are not dropping out. Like, it's going to ruin the rest of your life." And I wasn't thinking long term. I was thinking like, I was super political in high school. I was working, I'm going to say I was working for the Dems. I think you have to choose a side today. And so I was working on a lot of like Democratic campaigns and I was working on like women's issues. I was literally hustling in the street. You know, those people like panhandle in the street. I would panhandle with like big signs of like about women's issues. And I had a little milk jug and I would collect money so I could go to like big marches in Washington, DC. And I was like, ain't nobody got time for Algebra 2. Right. And again, you know, thankfully, Ms. Hanneman was kind of watching out for me and was like, she's like, I think you're going to go so much farther if you just finish this little high school diploma thing that becomes kind of important later on. And that was really amazing of her. And I feel like that's also what inspired me to get into education, because how quickly I could have fallen into the wrong path. Right. And having people looking out for you when you don't necessarily have that at home. I think we all take advantage for the fact, and my parents are amazing. I don't want anyone to walk away thinking my parents aren't amazing, but like I definitely took advantage of my parents. And I think we forget that, you know, that kids need a lot of guidance and we don't always provide that. And that's what got me into education. But then, so I went to an honors college here in Florida because I thought I want to make up my classes and I want to have freedom. It was a really crazy place. No one has ever heard of it. It's called New College of Florida for anyone who's actually interested. So I feel like I actually went to Harvard because I needed some real school on my resume so that people like actually thought that I had, gone somewhere legit and accredited. And also, Harvard wasn't even on my radar when I was applying to colleges in high school, right? It just wasn't, no one in my community had gone to Harvard. No one, it wasn't something that my family had grown up. No, like, oh, we all went to Harvard. You're going to Harvard, right? Like it wasn't even a thing. And I will say, because this is the right event to say this, I was applying to a couple of different business schools, and I remember I was applying to Fuqua, or I was going to apply to Fuqua, Kellogg. It was HBS and a couple of others, and Yale. And I was having a conversation with my dad, and I was like, my dad, the proudest moment, the greatest gift I can give to him is him going to his like amigos and being like, my daughter's going to Harvard Business School, right? Like that is literally the greatest gift I can give him. And it just wasn't going to sound the same when he was like, Fuqua, right? Like, yeah. Like how stupid is that? Like you shouldn't pick a business school because the name doesn't sound great in Spanish and your dad is not going to be super proud of you because like he doesn't know what that means, right? And Kellogg, he kept calling it the cereal school. And I was like, that's not pride. And Yale, you can't say Yale in Spanish. You sound like your kid is in jail, right? Mi hija está en jail. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. So it was Harvard.
Yeah, but what gave you the confidence to be like, oh, I want to drop out of high school, and now I'm at this honors college in Florida, Harvard. Let's go. Where did that confidence come from? And I asked so many people, I'm like, what do you want me to ask Max? And they're like, she is so confident. I want to know if she ever has imposter syndrome. So there are so many people that have said that to me. So I'm like, I don't know if she has it now. But I'm guessing maybe you had it then, or have you been a badass and a chief troublemaker the entire life?
That is a good jacket. And I was going to wear it for you, but like, you can't see my back. So I was like, I need to get like, I have a baseball cap or a big chain necklace. I would like to think that I've been an overconfident little Latina for my whole life. But I will say that I definitely had imposter syndrome because I think we grow up, women, people of color, BIPOC especially, right? Like there are so many intersectionality things that make us doubt ourselves because other people put that in our minds, right? If no one had ever said certain things to me, I don't think I would have ever thought I wasn't a badass, right? Like I was born a badass until very specifically in college. So again, at this lovely honors college, one of my professors, I'll tell you actually this whole story because we have time. So at my honors college, you do a senior thesis, right? You have to write like a kind of mini PhD because it's fancy, because it's an honors college. And I went to so I was in the political science department, and you have to defend your senior thesis in front of professors. It's like you come in and you kind of tear it apart and you defend it, and then you graduate because you've defended your thesis. So I went to see a fellow, a friend of mine who was defending her thesis, and she like froze. And she was like the top star in political science. And she froze. And so they kicked us all out because you're allowed to come and watch your friends. And they kicked us all out. They were like, she's obviously like super stressed. Like, everyone get out. Okay. So we all left. One of my professors that was on my thesis committee was also in that room. So I went to go see him afterwards. And he was like, so what did you think of your friend's thesis thing? And I was like, that was terrifying. Like, the fact that she froze in front of you guys. I mean, she's like the star in the political science department. And he goes, well, we were really hard on her. And he's like, we won't be that hard on you. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's a good thing. And he was like, I mean, we see her as like clerking for a Supreme Court justice, but we don't have the same expectations of you. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, like, tell me more. Like,
yeah.
And he's like, I mean, you know, we all know that you got in here because you checked the Latina box on your application. And I just like, I still, when I tell that story, like, I literally want to burst down in tears. Like, it's, how do you tell someone that? How do you say that? How do you like ever even like, even if you're thinking that, like, why would you ever say that to someone? And since that moment, like, I just always doubted myself. I always doubted that, like, maybe I got in because it was a diversity quotient, or maybe I'm not that smart. Maybe I'm not as smart as everybody else. Maybe, like, it like still frustrates me to this day. And the thing that got me out of it, I will say it's because of an amazing man named Gary Trujillo. So when I was at HBS, so again, total imposter syndrome. I worked for Mayor Bloomberg. I had gotten in to Teach for America. I had done all these incredible things, but I still was like, I got in just because, you know, someone was like, oh, she's Cuban. Like, we need okay, fine. So I meet Gary at this Harvard Business School event for Latinx applicants.
Yeah.
And he tells this story about how he's Mexican American and he was at HBS. And a student came up to him and was like, oh, you only got in here because you're Mexican American. And he told his professor that. He was like, maybe I did, right? Like, we all have, right? Like, it's only when someone else tells you that you start doubting. Before that, you're like, yeah, I'm a badass. So his professor, he tells his story. He says, the professor said, you know what? Maybe you did get in because you were Mexican American, but you're not going to get out because you're Mexican American. And I was like, boom, like my whole freaking world changed because I was like, holy crap, you're right. You're right. Probably I didn't get in here just because I checked off the Latina box. But even if I did, that's not what's going to get me out. I'm freaking intelligent. I'm fucking amazing, right? Like, that's what's going to get me out of all these programs. Like, that's what's going to allow me to complete with honors or complete, like, you know, and also like be a value add to these programs in these schools. Like, and it just like, it's so crazy, right? How like words that people say to you can completely shape or shift the way that you think about yourself or about your career. And that was it. After Gary said that, I've become a kind of almost overconfident a-hole. So that's where I think that's how it happened.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. And I think it's part of her personality. Frances, our executive director at Techqueria, she uses the word fuego all the time. And me, I didn't introduce earlier myself, but I work at General Assembly. We do tech training. And they were like, Gotti, what should be like the theme for Latinx Month for, you know, our social media? And I'm like, dude, we are just a fire of movement, of energy, of confidence at all times. And yes, we have machismo and there's racism in this country. And there is not equity just yet or equality, but we are always moving. We're always in community. And the power of being Latinx is because we have that immigrant gene. We have that feisty, fiery fuego gene. And we are relentless. And I think it's okay to be overconfident, especially because people are already, like you're saying, they're showering you with negative. They're showering you with planting the seeds and period, hard stop. You can do it too. And it's up to you to get out. And I absolutely love that you said that because it actually takes me, it's a perfect segue into, okay, now you're Latina and now you're from Miami, right? Yeah. But you're also a female. And we have to talk about being a female founder and a female in tech, which is another barrier that you've accomplished. So here's just the question, right? So what is the biggest challenge that we face as female leaders and female leaders in tech currently? And I'm going to guide the conversation even a little more. I want you to start with your story in San Francisco, where you went and you were like, the only woman, the only Latina, and you're like, what was it like there and now until today?
Yeah, so right after business school, so I graduated business school in 2012, and that was like like Instagram had just launched, right? I mean, like there was FOMO about everyone had to do a startup. And so I met a co-founder. We had a project. It was eHarmony for foodies. It was a really freaking good idea. And we decided, like, let's go to, obviously, to the Mecca, right? Let's go to Silicon Valley and let's try and build this thing. And we got an office. We got a Regis office above the old Waze office. Like, this is how long ago this was, right? Like, Waze was like 6 people in an office in Palo Alto. We were in Palo Alto. First of all, I get hives in the suburbs. I'm just not. I'm like such a city girl, and like I hate the suburbs. So we were in Palo Alto, which was like killing me. And then literally like every person I met in Silicon Valley, it was a bro, like legit bro. Most of the time, I was the only woman in the room. I'm white presenting, but I was the only person of color. And also it was just the culture there was toxic, and I said to myself, the company didn't really work out for a lot of reasons, but I always said to myself, if I start something else, I'm going to do it in my place of power. I'm going to do it in Miami, right? Because that's the place where my network is strong. That's where I don't have to deal with Broville like every 5 seconds. And also, like, think about it, right? If the culture loves Broville, how are you ever going to, make it, right? How are you ever going to compete if people devalue who you are, right? A spicy and fuego Latina and woman, like, you're always like, you can't even start the race. And Stephanie from Leche Lounge is amazing. I was on a panel with her, and she's the one that talked about it. That, like, I always kind of knew that Miami was my place of power, but she's the one that gave me the words. And she had done a startup, and she moved back home because she was like, I have kids, and like, that's that's where my community is. And I can, work and have life balance. And blah, blah. If I go and build my startup in New York or Silicon Valley, I have 19 things that are against me versus 2 things that are against me, right? And I feel like Miami, coming home, right? This is my hometown, so I'm a big dolphin in a small pond, right? Like, it's a small tech ecosystem. It's growing. It's getting there, but they love the fact that here's a hometown Latina, Miami-born, founder who's trying to build her company here, and I get a lot of resources, and I get a lot of support, and we're always being talked about because people want us to win. That's actually, I don't think people realize like how important that is for startups. There are so many reasons why you as a startup are not going to win. So like, if you can stack things in your favor so that you have those resources available to, so that you have the people in your corner, I think that's, I mean, I don't know how people do it without that.
Yeah. So back to the question back to the topic about female leadership. What does it feel? What are the problems and the challenges that you encounter because you're a female?
Yeah. So I will give a shout out to Rise of the Rest and Steve Case. Steve and Jean Case came down to Miami for their last bus tour. So they do, Rise of the Rest is always trying to invest in founders and companies who are outside of the tech bubble. So anyone who's listening, if you're building a company outside of the tech bubble, like, please, check out Rise of the Rest. They're amazing. And they really do want to support companies outside of Silicon Valley and New York and Boston. And so they came down for a bus tour to meet companies in Tampa, Orlando, Miami, and Puerto Rico. They went to San Juan, and they held a women's brunch when they were here in Miami for the day. And they said, it was a lunch, I guess, it was Thursday. And they said, we've never done this in any other bus tour, right? I mean, this was like bus tour 8 or 9 or something. And they were like, we've never done this because usually when we go to a tech ecosystem, there aren't this many women around the table. And they were like, every time we were trying to plan for this day, right, we would come down and we would do site visits and all that stuff. Like, everyone we met was a woman, right? Like, Miami Angels was being led by a woman. The Venture City was being led by a woman. CIC was being led by a woman. Right? Like, Nancy Dahlberg was the tech reporter was a woman. Like, Black Girls Code, a space called Tribe, right? Like, all freaking run by women. And so I think that because we're competing in a world, right, we're like trying to fight against 98% of VC dollars that are being given to men. I think women can be very, very collaborative. So that's the positive side. And then I would say on I mean, we all know this, right? The tough side of being a woman is that you're just always underestimated. And you're just always expected. The other thing that really freaking bothers me is like, it's always expected that people think all I want in life is to get married and have children. It's not. I don't want to get married. I don't want to have children. Like, that's just like, but they see a woman in the room pitching and they're like, oh, I don't know when she's going to find a man and she's going to get a fiance and then she's going to leave her company and she's going to have a baby and then we're going to never see her again. And it's like, what the hell? Where does that come from? Like, and also like the assumptions are so outdated. And then also to put them on someone who literally like that's not the thing that I want to accomplish in life, but walking into a room as a woman, that is already the expectation, right? They're looking for a ring. They're trying to ask like questions. And, I would walk into a room with my co-founder, Alvaro, who you've met, and I would do the pitch for 20 minutes. I'd sit down and they'd ask him all the questions. I stopped inviting him. I was like, Alvaro, you're not invited. He was so happy. He was like, please don't invite me. I hate these. So it was like, great. But I was like, no, I'm going to be the only person in the room you can ask questions to. So sorry, you have to talk to a woman. And the other thing that happened as well is, I think this is another thing that happens to us women in startups. We usually, this is a very big, like, stereotype, but women usually build companies for other women, right? We are always trying to solve our problems and problems of other women. You don't see many men building better breast pumps or better, on-demand childcare products, right? They're not, unfortunately. And so a lot of women are solving like other women's problems. And so therefore, I think a lot of times when we walk into a room and we talk about things, when 92% of the people around the table, or 99 or 100% of the people around the table are men, there is also an assumption I think that happens where they look at you and then, so here I am, a former teacher, getting up and talking about ed tech, like how cute, right? And I had an investor tell me, so my pitch deck used to have the team slide all the way at the end, right? Because it's like, we should be talking about the company and then I'll tell you about how fucking awesome the team is, but like, let's talk about the company. And I had an investor tell me that when the team slide was all the way at the end, he spent the entire presentation wondering if I knew how to run a company. And he was like, if I'm going to give her millions of dollars, like she's this little teacher who probably loves little kids and like wants little kids of her own. And like, I can't trust her with $1 million. And then he's like, oh, and then I saw your Harvard Business School logo. And I was like, oh, and I was like, seriously? Like, seriously? So I moved my team slide up to like slide 3, right? So it's like Caribu, it's awesome. Virtual play dates, big market. Okay, team, right? Like don't even have the chance or the time to have the intrinsic bias to even think for a second that I can't run my company and that I cannot manage your money wisely.
Yeah, that's huge. Perfect. So moving your team slide to the beginning so they have no chance to underestimate you. Check. Whoever Sal and Francisco are Techqueria Twitter guys, that's it. That's the golden line that we've been waiting for. I mean, you have so many already anyways, but now I actually want you to share what skills you've had to learn as a founder that you wish somebody would have told you, even though you were prepared as a Harvard student, as immigrant powered, as the feisty fuego Latina that you are, and all the life experiences that you have. What are these these things that you've learned so that when you're a founder, you're giving the shortcut and you're giving the playbook to 382 people that are connected right now?
Oh, I wish that there were shortcuts. I will say that if it's your first startup, it doesn't matter if you went to a fancy business school, doesn't matter if your parents are small business owners and are hustlers, doesn't matter if you, it does not matter. Running a startup is the most wonderful, exciting, terrifying, and crazy experience on the planet. And which is why I love it. I am obsessed with Caribu. And I think you have to be, right? If you're not obsessed with the problem you're solving and the solution that you've built, this is too hard. This is way too hard. And like you said, Gadi, like I feel like every day I pick up a new skill, which is why this is the only job I've been at for longer than like a year or two. Because I feel like in every other job, I never got the chance to really upskill. I never got the chance to learn something new, right? I solved a problem and then I left. And with Caribu, it's like literally every day there's like a new problem. And I've learned marketing, advertising, strategy, operations, management, HR, DEI. I've learned tech. I'm like way more dangerous in tech. I actually know sometimes half of what the engineering team is saying. And I have to know that, right? Because I'm doing all the investor relations, I'm building culture, I'm doing all the hiring, right? Like I've literally had to become a rock star in like every aspect, because I'm an overachiever, but also because like I feel like it's all on me, right? Like if we don't raise the money, it's on me. If the culture is bad, it's on me. If the product doesn't work, kind of more on Alvaro, but it's kind of still on me. If we don't have great books, if we don't have, Glama in Israel making a magical Caribu call with her grandson in Australia, and that call didn't connect, it's on me. Like, I mean, it's when you're building something from nothing and when it's yours, it's terrifying. Like it is literally on you. And I think this is important for all the people that are listening. You don't have to be as crazy as me, where like you feel like you have to like become an expert in everything. You just have to know enough to be dangerous. You have to know enough so that you can delegate and hire the person. I think that took me a really long time. Is like I was like, okay, I don't have to be a marketing genius, but I at least have to know enough so that I can hire the right head of marketing and like give them my commander's intent. I can't remember what book that comes from, but like in the military, you as a startup CEO have to start thinking like a commander in the military, where you have to say like, look, this is where we're going. This is the goal we're trying to accomplish. Now let's all work towards that. Because as a startup founder in the first couple of years, you are the entire military, right? You are doing all the pieces.
Mama, papa, la que barre, la que pinta, la que
yeah,
lleva,
you're the medic
CEO.
on the team, you're the cook, you're doing it all. And I think the other thing, the other skill set that you have to have is you have to have, I don't like even saying that it's like you have to be okay with failure. Failure is not the thing that we're doing. We're scientists, right? Every day I come into Caribu, I have a scientific problem that I'm trying to solve. I have a hypothesis. I do some tests. Some of them work, some of them don't. Right? You have to be okay with testing things and having them work and having them not work, more than like you have to be okay with failure. And I think you also have to think big picture and day to day at the same time. I think that's one of the other hardest parts about being a startup CEO is like in the beginning, you are a day-to-day person, right? You're everybody in the military on the attack. And then all of a sudden you have to become like the visionary who's managing the people, right? That's like a very hard transition. And that's why a lot of startup founders get replaced, right? Because not everyone can make that transition, and not everyone wants to make that transition, even if you can make that transition, right? There's a lot more we can explore there.
And this is one of my favorite questions because I am obsessed with leadership and women like you, and in general, people that are able to do just that. Think brilliantly big and bullish, but also be able to be in the details day to day, because that's really where the magic happens. So it's what questions or what filters do you use or do you put in place to make sure that you've made the best decision possible?
So that I have to credit HBS with. So when I was looking at business schools, there's only 2 business schools that teach 100% case study. That's Harvard Business School and Darden at UVA. And one of the things that I learned painfully, and one of the reasons I wanted to drop out of high school and college, because I don't learn from lecture, right? Like when people just talk at me, this is why I don't listen to podcasts. I offend all of the podcast interviewers when I'm on their podcast. They're like, what podcast do you listen to? I was like, I don't. I don't talking at me. That's not how I learn. And I think that's also important in education is like, you have to learn, you have to know how you learn. And it might be visual. It's actually called oral, AURAL. It might be tactile, right? It might be reading. You kind of have to find that. And I think for me, I learn best through experiences, right? And through the case study method. So HBS, like their one goal in life is to make you a great CEO, a great leader, right? We actually, there's a kind of a joke at HBS, which is HBS graduates are like terrible middle managers, but great CEOs, right? So we're like terrible to hire right out of HBS because we all think we should be CEO. And so we're like terrible to work with. But then when we become leaders, like that's what we were trained to do. And I think what HBS taught me through the case method, right? So every class, you're reading a case, right? So there's like 500 cases that you do in year 1 alone. And every case starts with, Max was at her desk, the CEO, she had this big problem. She put her feet up on the desk and she thought to herself, what do I do? Right. And then it gives you background. It's almost like a Sherlock Holmes novel every time, right? It gives you background. And then at the end, it gives you financial data. So like, you're almost like a detective being like, okay, what are the numbers? What is this person saying? What's this other issue? And what they taught us was you have to make decisions with incomplete information. And I think that is the number one skill that you have to be comfortable with as a founder, because you will, first of all, in no job will you ever have complete information. But especially building your own startup, you are making it up as you go, right? Like, and I think that I trained my gut and my instinct to kind of know when I had enough information that I felt comfortable moving forward. And like I said, look, it's rapid testing, right? It's hypothesis driven science that you're kind of doing every day. So you try things and then try not to make big mistakes, right? Like try to make as many small mistakes as you possibly can as you're testing.
Yeah. You were talking about mistakes, which includes hiring the right people. It includes having the right people in place and giving them the vision and letting them do the work without you micromanaging. So I want to talk about that, the people management part. What are some of the hard and soft, well, let's talk about soft skills that you look for when you're hiring team members. Hard stop, are you hiring currently?
Kind of hiring, always looking for great talent. One of the tricky things I got myself into is that there was so much great talent during the pandemic that was being let go from companies. Unfortunately, the pandemic was not as kind to everybody as it's been kind to Caribu. And so we tripled our team in the last 6 months. We were on a hiring spree. One, because my philosophy is if you find a great person, figure it out, right? Like talent is literally the most important piece of your business. And so when you find amazing, incredible people, like find a job for them on your team, like figure it out, because that will be your greatest asset. And so I just found a lot of really great people, and we did have a lot of needs, right? I mean, we 10x the company overnight in March. So all of a sudden we had a lot of engineering needs, we had customer support needs, we had more marketing needs, we had partnership needs. So we did that. And so always, I have an ojo out for good talent. So if anyone's interested in working at Caribu, just drop me a line. But when we did this session over at WeWork, I love talking about how I look for talent, because I feel like I have gotten to a place where I really have like a good process. The soft skills that I look for is ability to learn, right, and to take feedback. And so actually in my interview process, I do role plays, and I do this very specifically. So I do one role play. And then I ask, and I make the person like feel super uncomfortable, right? Like, I mean, I just put them in this like most awkward position. And, like, especially if they're doing something that has to do public facing, I'm like, ring, ring. I'm like, let's get on the phone. And people are like, what? The first question I always ask after the role play is, how do you think you did? So I'm checking for self-awareness, right? Does this person think they are the most rock star person on the planet, and like they bombed that thing and they have no perception of like how they're doing? Because that person's very hard to coach, right? How did they think they did? Right. And then I give them feedback, and I'm like, oh, but like a helpful feedback, like, oh, this would have been really great if you had done this, or I would have really liked this instead of this. And then I do a second role play, and I see if they incorporate the feedback into that second role play, because I want to know, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to, challenge yourself? Are you willing to get better? Right. Like that's all we're all trying to do in life. Feedback is a gift when it comes from people who have good intent. And it's always, hopefully intended to make you more efficient, better, more conscious of something. So I think that's super, super important. I'm always looking for that. And I'm always looking for, like I said, like that hunger, right? Like I want you to be as hungry as I am about making Caribu successful, because the more successful we are, the more families and kids that are going to have a much better video calling experience, and are going to have a much better relationship and are going to build timeless memories together if we do our job right, right? So like, I want you to be as hungry as I am for that. And my management philosophy is hire the best person, get the fuck out of their way.
Yeah. That's why you hired them. Yeah. If you don't let them breathe, how are they going to be creative? And
I'm not here to micromanage you. I hired you because you're freaking amazing. how do I get things out of your way? How do I make you better? How do I help you? But like, go, run.
Yeah. What are the lessons that you've learned? Obviously, I read about you all the time. We're in the same Miami ecosystem. You went to a free service on COVID because you couldn't bear the thought that people weren't going to be able to connect because of those $7 or whatever a month, and you decided to go free. So teach us, give us the HBS case study of Caribu of the last 6 months.
Oh my God. And we have 5 minutes?
Well, we're Latinos, so we can go
okay, perfect,
over, I think I'm gonna ask Francis, who is our host, to give us the +3 min. You know, like in the soccer and the football games. They're gonna give us +3 or +2 or +5. So Francis, I'm looking at you.
I'll try and, as you can see, I'm a talker. So Mohammed. Okay. So one, as you mentioned, I not only have an MBA because I really do like to make money and I am business minded and I like to be efficient and I don't like waste, but I also got an MPP, a Master's of Public Policy at the Kennedy School, because I also am a bleeding heart liberal, right? So like I care about the world and I care about puppies and I care about kids and I care about the environment. And like, I want things to be done in a conservative, not conservative, but in conservationist way, right? I want the world to continue. And that's tough. That's tough to try and like constantly always do those two things. So one of the things that I just always said about Caribu is we're always going to have those two things in good, healthy tension, right? We're going to be focused on making money, but at the same time, we're always going to have a giving component. When we first started Caribu, we gave free subscriptions to all currently serving U.S. military. That was just, who else needs something like Caribu, right? Like, and is giving their family and their sacrifice and their life and all that stuff. We still do that program. Then when COVID came around, I was like, I can't bear the fact there's 1 billion children out of school across the globe. Like, what is he? And then my Jewish grandmother guilt comes in and you're like, ay, no van a comer, and like the whole thing. And so I decided to go free. And the company was behind me. My investors were behind me. We had just raised a bunch of money. We felt like it was the right decision. And it literally could not have been a better decision. Like I could not have planned it any better. First of all, when we went free, it was Saturday, March 14th. I still remember the day. I'm going to actually like put, like when people put their first dollar at the restaurant, right? I'm going to put like March 14th, Aggie. That's the day we 10x'd the company overnight in 24 hours. And it was mainly because it was free, right? There was no barrier to try out Caribu, and Caribu like literally had invented something. So there was a barrier to people being like, well, how is this better than FaceTime? And we were like, but it is, trust us. And it was like, well, I don't know that I trust you for $7 a month. Now it's $10. Just a heads up, everybody. Value. And so we went free, and I think it was, again, a really good decision because AT&T, who's one of our investors, the next day, so Sunday, calls me on a Sunday and says, how can we help? And they were like, you're a startup that we support. We love you. We care about education as well. We want kids to have access to Caribu during the pandemic. How can we help? And they actually gave us $560,000, $500,000, to help us as a company make sure that we could scale for free. And it was insane. I mean, it just the opportunities that happened, the people that were talking about Caribu, the families that we helped. I mean, people were trying to pay us. It was actually pretty funny. We kept getting emails from people being like, "Hey, can we donate to you? Like, how do?" And I was like, "You can't." But the case study at the end of the day was free is a great opportunity for growth, right? It's a great way to get people to try your product. But at the end of the day, investors want to see, will people pay for this, right? And you have to monetize somehow, whether that's ads, whether it's subscriptions, whether it's sponsorships, whatever the thing is. People want to see the hyper growth, but they also want to see, because that's a business, right? I'm not running a nonprofit, I'm running a business. It has to pay.
Money matters, and money is where the power is as well for continuing to invest and growth and jobs. So, absolutely.
So that's the mini case study.
Yeah, that's perfect. We have 1 minute left. We're at 2:45 right now. And I want to ask you, how are you giving back to future Latinas and Latinx community members? And how can do you mentor? Do you offer office hours? If I want to reach out to you and say, hey, how do I send my first email trying to look for a co-founder or an investor, or I'm going to have my first pitch, are you doing any kind of that work, or is there a place for you to go? Do you want to do it through Techqueria? So I just want to know how you're giving back and how people can connect with you.
Yes. Feel free to follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. Especially if I see a Latinx name, or even if you don't have a Latinx name like me, but you leave me a little note and you're like, I saw you at a Latinx conference. I'm like, I think it's important that we keep building that network together. I was much better about mentoring and doing office hours before I started raising money. So this pandemic obviously has created an opportunity for us to raise money. So I'm in the middle of that. But as soon as I'm done with that, which I always do this, every time I raise money, I'm like, oh, as soon as I'm done, I'll have all this free time. It's a lie, just so everyone knows, but I'll be able to dedicate myself to the thing that I think is most important, which is so many people gave me their time and their advice and their coaching and their feedback for free, right? Because they just wanted to make sure that I was successful. And I do pay that back. I do pay that forward. I think that's super important. And also, not everyone is going to understand where we're coming from, right? So I do think it's really important that I, as a woman, am mentoring other women or other Latinx founders, because I can help say, this was the path I had to build because I'm not a white male in Silicon Valley, right? And like, hopefully that could be helpful. So like I said, follow me on Twitter or get on LinkedIn with me. And then hopefully I'll have some more time in Q1 and would love to help anyone who needs it and give advice on fundraising or finding product market fit or growing a team during a pandemic, little things.
Yeah. I couldn't end any other way but asking you, and I wouldn't do my job as Techqueria Miami chapter director and General Assembly chapter expansion leader or campus leader. Why Miami? Oof. I get this question all the time. So let's go. Let's get these people coming to Miami. Why Miami?
Okay, like, why not Miami? Hello. First of all, like, it's always lovely outside, right? We don't have winter. And if it is winter, it's 70. Like, that's our winter. We have the beach. I literally am looking at the beach. Okay. Where else can you work where it's like just like looking at the beach? The people here are freaking fantastic. The food is amazing, whether it's Haitian food, Cuban food, Venezuelan food, we've got it all. Peruvian, we have really good Peruvian here. The café con leche is only made well in Miami. Like, do not try and get a café con leche outside of Miami. It is the worst experience. Like, we are fueled by that. The people here are so warm. Like, I don't leave my house because I know I will hug any person I see. And right now I'm not allowed to hug. So like, what a wonderful community and culture to be part of, where like that warm embrace is like not only physical, but emotional and mental. And also, like I said, like, this is an emerging tech ecosystem. You can come here and you can help build the ecosystem versus going to an already well-established ecosystem where you have to play by their rules. I don't like playing by other people's rules. I like making my own rules. And I like seeking power so that I can redistribute that power. Right? The Harriet Tubman philosophy, right? You break through and then you come back and you go get more people and you bring them and then you come back and like you get more people, right? And like in Miami, I feel like we have that culture of helping each other out and making sure that and again, a group of women down here that are like, holy hell, like so collaborative, want to see you succeed, our biggest cheerleaders. Like, it's just an incredible place to build a company. And also we have Pitbull as like our official mascot, right? Like he's like the unofficial mayor.
It's fun.
Like,
it's fun to be
so
here.
Fun.
Yeah. Max, I could talk to you and I could ask you 5,000 more questions, but we are at time now. So I'm just gonna recap. 1, the name of the game is making decisions based on incomplete information. 2, founders are scientists, go in every single day with a hypothesis, know how to test it, and just flip the switch on failing. You're not failing, you're testing at all times. And you are come to Miami because you can build the ecosystem here. You can help you are part of the power, so you can redistribute the power. And of course, being immigrant powered is a blessing. It's part of our DNA. It's just how we are going to make sure that future generations are more equitable, that they're more inclusive, that the experience is actually built for us. So That's it for today. Thank you for being our keynote speaker for day 2 for career growth and for sharing your insights. And I'm going to hold you accountable to that Q1
I know, please
mentoring.
do.
I don't know how, but I will. You know me, I will. Someday I'll email you back and be like, hey, let's do this for the Techqueria family.
Please
again.
do. It's actually the thing that like keeps me going. My customer feedback keeps me going, and like mentoring other amazing founders, especially women and people of color, like just makes my day. So please keep me to that.
That's it then. Thank you so much. Go have cafecito, 3 p.m., ready to go.
Wow.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thank you, Max.